Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of the Make It Happen show. I'm your host, Michelle McCullough, and I am delighted that you have joined us today. I am so excited about our guest. First up on the show, we're going to be having John Lee Dumas with us, talking about podcasting and building your expert platform, both on and off the air. Later in the show, after John's interview, I will also be sharing with you the 5 steps that every prospect makes to turn into a customer. So the 5 steps that you can really dial into to help you figure out your marketing processes and know what the consumer is thinking so that you can decide how to play to your marketing strengths, what messages to use when. So that'll be later up in the show. I'm excited to share that with you today via Google Hangout. For those of you who are new to Make It Happen, welcome. I'm delighted that you're with us, and I honor you, whether you are watching us live or watching the playback later. I know that your time is valuable, and I honor you for giving me the next 45 minutes of your day, and I promise to make it worth your while. You can see all the past shows of Make It Happen, both on the radio, via podcast, and also videos at michelleontheair.com. If you click on the Make It Happen button at the top of the page, it'll take you to the listen and download, and you can listen and view any of those. You can also see videos just like this on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/speakmichelle. And we are excited to have you with us. Make It Happen is all about helping you make it happen in life and business. It's about helping you ultimately decide and create the life that you want without sacrificing a personal life. Whether you want to grow your paychecks or grow your relationships, we're here to help you with that. And Make It Happen is all about helping you find those moments that turn from where you decide to leave mediocrity behind and really climb the peaks for peak performance. Today's show I'm excited about because I've been following John for a long time, and I'm excited to hear his wisdom, and I know he's got some valuable resources for us. I've been doing podcasting and hosting my own radio show for about a year. He is certainly an expert in this area, but I also know he has tons of value to offer in other aspects of business as well. But let me introduce you to our guest. John Lee Dumas is the founder and host of Entrepreneur on Fire, a top-ranked podcast named Best in iTunes in 2013. John interviews today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week and has been featured in both Time and Inc. magazine, and is the founder of Podcasters Paradise, a community where podcasters can create, grow, and monetize their podcast. Entrepreneur on Fire generates over 450,000 unique downloads a month with past guests such as Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, Barbara Cochran, Gary Vaynerchuk, and Guy Kawasaki. Recaps of the 500-plus episodes and much more can be found at his website at E as in Edward, O as in Oscar, Fire.com. So that's eofire.com. John, welcome to the Make It Happen show.
Michelle, I am prepared to ignite.
I can't wait. I love it. I know you're going to be on fire. So I want to hear just a little bit of your backstory. What did you do before Entrepreneur on Fire? How did you get this idea, and how did you get started?
Yeah, my life is a pretty standard one up until just a couple of years ago. I went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship, so I spent 4 years training as a cadet, and then when I graduated college, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, and that was back in 2002. So I found myself in Iraq a year later, spending a 13-month tour of duty as an armored platoon leader of 4 tanks and 16 men, which was a pretty intense experience for a 23-year-old at the time. And after my 4 years in the Army, I tried a bunch of different things. I tried law school, corporate finance, residential real estate, commercial real estate. I even worked for an internet startup. That was my 20s. I pretty much quit every single thing that I tried, but I'm not ashamed of that. I actually think it's a good quality to have, to be willing to quit when you realize you're not actually living your authentic self and giving yourself an opportunity to try something new. And that's just what I kept doing, was try new things. And finally, at the age of 32, I actually did find my passion, something that really resonated with me. That was podcasting. And back in September of 2012, I launched Entrepreneur on Fire, which is a 7-day-a-week business podcast that interviews today's most inspiring and successful entrepreneurs and shares their journey. And we've been going strong now for over 600 episodes. As you mentioned, we were awarded Best of iTunes in 2013. We've been honored to have some great guests, and I'm looking forward to a bright future.
Well, that's so exciting. I like you even more now that I know that you are a member of the Armed Forces. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much.
I also thank you so much for your service. I have a soft place in my heart for soldiers and veterans, so I think that's awesome. Now, I love listening to people's stories and hearing how they come, and I love the quote that talks about how you're a 7-year overnight success and how it takes lots of things that lead up to that point, and then the one thing that happens that really gets you there. So I want to talk a little bit about success in podcasting. And before we do that, I'd love for you to share. I'm sure you're familiar with other podcasters. You're familiar with the competition out there. What are some of the things that you consider to be the biggest mistakes that experts are making in podcasting these days?
So one thing that I think is a huge mistake that people are making in podcasting these days is not niching down into a very narrow niche. You know, everybody's scared to really niche down these days, even though I've been proclaiming for this entire year of 2014 that 2014 is truly the year of the niche podcast. Everybody wants to launch with a very broad, wide-based, unniched podcast because they want to resonate with everybody, but the sad thing is that because it's so broad, it's really resonating deeply with nobody. And it's those podcast hosts that are really willing to just niche down and then niche down again and then truly niche down a third time until it hurts. Those are the podcast hosts that are building small but raving audiences. It's going to keep them going forward, growing. And then as they start to build that momentum, build that base, then they can start to pull out and get a little more broad as they're growing. But they're never going to establish that foothold if they start incredibly broad. They really need to start in, get focused, build that raving fan base around a topic that you as a podcast host are passionate about, and then and only then once you've established a tribe, then you can start looking at expanding.
No, I think that's really good. I know even for me, I struggle with that too because I want to talk about business. I want to talk about motivation. I want to talk about those things. But the times that I'm really focused and narrow niched are the times that I have the greatest response in my shows. And it makes it so much easier for me to promote it as well. And so I totally agree with you on that. Do you have any other couple tips you'd like to share for podcasters, whether they're just beginning or advanced, on making your podcast a success?
So there's 3 keys to making a podcast a success, and I really am going to put these in ascending order, meaning I'm going to start with, they're all incredibly important, but the last one, number 3, is in my mind the differentiator and the one that most people leave out of this very important equation. Number 1, each podcast, Michelle, and this is going to sound obvious because it is, but one thing I don't think people really grasp is that every single podcast should be as value-packed as possible for your listener. You need to respect your listener, realizing that they are committing their time, their incredibly limited resource, which is time, to listen to your podcast, whether they're driving to work or working out. And you really need to be focused on making that episode as value-packed as possible. Now, believe me, that's going to be different for every single podcast host. My episode 10 and episode 600, there are completely different value bombs in there because I didn't have the ability or the skills at 10 as a host that I did at episode 600. That comes with time. But still, back at 10, I was giving everything I could, as much value as I was capable of at that point, and that's the important thing. And number 2 is free. Keep everything free. I've had a lot of people approach me about podcasting. You know, should I start making some kind of a membership program to pay for my podcast? Should I put things behind a paywall? Should I start trying to monetize right away at XYZ? And the answer to that question is no. Your only focus as a podcast host needs to be building an audience. And you are going to be able to build a much bigger, a much larger, and a much more engaged audience incredibly faster if you keep your content completely free. I didn't even try to monetize Entrepreneur on Fire for the first 6 months. My sole focus, Michelle, was to create the best value bond podcast that I could create and deliver it to as many people as possible for free. Those are my 2 focuses. And since then, it allowed me to grow an audience, and now it has allowed me to monetize on a very high level. But number 3, and this is really the area that most people lack and most people lose focus and lose sight on, and you kind of see their podcast drift off because of it, and that is consistency. The key to Entrepreneur on Fire is my consistency. Now, it's a 7-day-a-week podcast. I'm not saying you need to have a 7-day-a-week podcast to be successful. There are plenty of podcasts that are once a week, twice a month, even once a month. that are incredibly successful, but each one of those follows an incredibly consistent publishing format, so their listeners know when that podcast is going live. Everybody that's part of Fire Nation knows they can wake up every single morning, 7 days a week, Christmas Day included, and there will be a fresh episode of Entrepreneur on Fire waiting for them to listen to if they so choose. And that's where I've been able to build a very loyal and rabid following of Fire Nation listeners because of that consistent schedule. So find a frequency that works for you, whether that be twice a week. And if it's going to be twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays are the best publication days. If it's going to be 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If it's going to be once a week, I like either choosing Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I don't think it matters specifically which one of those days it is, but one of those days I think is a good day to choose. And if it's going to be twice a month or once a month, communicate with your audience. Tell them, let them know when to expect that episode to go live, and always come through.
I think those top three are so great, and I thank you so much for sharing those in such a concise manner and in a way that we can all grasp. I think everything that you talked about, I know there are a lot of people who are podcasting, but there are still a lot of people who aren't podcasting and are wondering, is this hard? Can I do this? And really, everybody can do it, and those three tips are so great. I love one of the things you talked about in terms of monetization, and I love that you also post your income on your site because you're open about how that's bringing revenue to you, and I love that you have supplementary products. And I also love your strategy in terms of building the audience first and selling to them second, but then still really committing to the content. But on that subject, what are some thoughts that you have in terms of great supplementary products and ways to monetize without being overly promotional?
So this is one of the #1 questions that I receive, and I think it's a great one because a lot of people stress out when they first launch a podcast or when they're thinking about launching a podcast. They're like, John, we see that you have Podcaster's Paradise. We see that you have Webinar on Fire. Like, we see that you have these products and services for an audience, for your audience, for Fire Nation, and it's financially very successful and fruitful. How do I create my product? I don't know what to create. I'm clueless. And that's why the power of following those 3 steps, Michelle, is so critical. Because if you follow those 3 steps, what you're going to do is you're going to build an audience. And that should be your only focus. Because then once you've built that audience, then all you need to do is use these things right here, your ears. And you listen to that audience. Because that audience, Michelle, is going to tell you, what are they struggling with? What are their obstacles, pain points, and challenges? If you listen and you really track and find these consistent themes that over and over again are happening for all of your listeners, your tribe, my Fire Nation, then you are going to have products and services that are just handed to you. People are going to say, wow, this is exactly what I'm struggling with. This is what I wish existed in the world. This is my major pain point. You hear those things enough times, Michelle, guess what? Create a product that solves that pain, that fixes and alleviates that challenge, that breaks off that obstacle that was in that listener's way. And that's how Podcaster's Paradise was created. That's how Webinar on Fire was created. I just listened to my audience. They told me what they needed, and then I created it for them in that manner. So if you focus first and foremost on delivering incredible value for free with consistency, you are going to build an audience. And that audience, Michelle, will show you the way.
I love it. I think that's such great advice. Thank you so much for that. I also want to talk about how you promote your podcast and how after the show, I mean, I know you have a way loyal following that knows they can wake up in the morning and come to your site for that new show, but are you using other parts of your platform to promote those podcasts, either directing them to iTunes or directing them to your site? And how does that work? Is there a specific social media outlet that you love? Because I know that part of building a podcast isn't just having the podcast and isn't just having the site, but it's also promoting it so people can hear what you're putting out there.
Absolutely. And there's just so many different ways that you can promote both your podcast and your products and services. So for the products and services specifically, I like to use all the means that are at my hand. So during my outros of Entrepreneur on Fire, you'll hear me talk about the weekly podcast that we do the weekly free webinar that we do called the Podcast Workshop. And you'll also hear on other outros, I talk about the free webinar that we do for Webinar on Fire, and we do that twice a month. And then you'll see every single day when I'm tweeting, a couple of my tweets will be about either one of those two products. You'll see on my website, my hello bar at the top, I'll have, it'll be rotating. It's an A/B test right now, so it's 50% of the time it's showing Podcaster's Paradise webinars. 50% of the time it's showing Webinar on Fire webinars, allowing people the opportunity to sign up for those webinars there. And the same thing in my sidebar. So I'm really using every means available. I let my list know about it. We have over 13,000 people now on the Entrepreneur on Fire newsletter list. And so we mention it to them, when the time is right. And so we're really using all the different means that we have available. But I will say, for social media specifically, my favorite tool to spread the word about the podcast and about the products and services that we have and about the different free webinars that we give is Twitter. I do love Twitter for a lot of reasons, because it really just allows people to see things in a snippet, to take action right there with the links. And we see a lot of great engagement and interaction there, and especially with Facebook and their recent algorithm changes, where if you post something, you're probably going to be lucky if 1% of your audience actually even gets to see that. We're really seeing Twitter kind of jump forward and really take the lead on that. But that's not to say that where that opportunity with Facebook was taken away, another one was inserted that we completely utilize on a daily basis, and that's Facebook advertising. Because what Facebook did was, when they stopped allowing people's just normal posts and normal whatever to be displayed in very limited feeds, when they started having that happen, it was because they started giving an incredible priority to people that were willing to pay for sponsored feed posts or right-hand ads. So Entrepreneur on Fire, we do an average daily spend of $250 to drive people to the free podcast workshop, where we just give an hour and a half of free content about the world of podcasting, how it can benefit you, and then of course we dive into Podcaster's Paradise and offer people the opportunity to join on that live webinar. And the numbers work. We spend a couple $1,000s a week typically to make between $15,000 to $25,000 on that live webinar. So there are some great options, some great opportunities. When one avenue closes, it probably means another one's opened up. In the case of Facebook is a great example. But as far as free, we love Twitter.
I love Twitter too. It has by far been the most successful for promoting my show and downloads and growing our following that way. Twitter's been great. I love other outlets as well. I also use Google Plus a little bit and Facebook a little bit, and ads like you mentioned. I know that there are a lot of small business owners and marketers out there that are frustrated with the recent algorithm change and what that means for what they've done before. And I've always said that I feel like your greatest marketing responsibility is to create a home court advantage. And when you're on Facebook, you're the visitor. And when you're on Twitter, you're the visitor. So you really have to figure out how to change the rules and change the game. If you're going to play on Facebook, figure out what those rules are and master it. And if it's mastering ads, do it. And if you're on Twitter, you just promote as the way that you can and figure out the frequency that your audience will endure, and so that you can get a lot of things out there. But yeah, I think that's great advice. I want to ask you, we ask all of our guests to share what their favorite make it happen tool, resource, or tip is. So I'd love for you to share with our audience. I know that you have a lot you have going on. You're really great at structure. I listened to one of your shows talking about how you batch your time, and you get a lot done. A lot of the peak performers that I interview on this show, I'm so impressed with all the things that they are able to produce and accomplish. And I know our listeners are also thinking, gosh, how do you do it all? How do you have 7 days a week of a podcast and also be doing live webinars weekly and promoting things with the way that you monetize your strategy? So what is your favorite make it happen tip or resource?
So my favorite make it happen resource by far is something that I truly could not live without. And a lot of people say that, they're kind of over dramatic when they say that. But this is actually a reality. I mean, when I first was coming up with the idea to do a 7-day-a-week podcast interviewing inspiring and successful entrepreneurs, nobody had done it at that point. There was no 7-day-a-week podcast that was interviewing successful and aspiring entrepreneurs, and I kept getting pushback from my mentor and from other people in the industry who were saying, John, there's a reason why it doesn't exist, because what do inspiring and successful entrepreneurs all have in common? They're incredibly busy. How are you going to schedule 30 interviews a month with 30 busy, crazy entrepreneurs? All you're going to be doing is going back and forth and coming up and canceling and rescheduling. And there's a tool that I've utilized in conjunction with something that you've already mentioned. And before I mention the tool, I'm going to mention what you talked about, which is what I call the batching method. And Michelle, for me, it's everything. So I just have my studio day, and you're looking at my studio right now. It's my living room, but it's also my studio. That's how I promote it. And so when I reach out to guests, I say, hey, listen, the Entrepreneur on Fire studio day is on Mondays. I do 8 interviews back to back. I start at 8 a.m. and I finish at 4 p.m. On the hour, every hour, I'm doing one interview with an inspiring and successful entrepreneur. Can you fit into this schedule? Can you fit into this studio time that I have? You can choose this Monday or any Monday for the next 6 months. I mean, here's a schedule that you can choose from. And because of that, Michelle, I've gotten literally 0 feedback because I give people, many, many days to choose from, so they can find a time that works for them now, soon, or in the future. And so every single Monday from now, literally until the middle of August, as we sit right now, is booked with 8 entrepreneurs every single Monday, back to back to back. And so every one of my Mondays consists of that. And Michelle, it's a long day. It's time consuming. It's exhaustive. By the end of the day, I am definitely ready, for a nap, or maybe even for just sleep totally till the next day. But the reality is I've just done 8 interviews, meaning I am done the interview portion of my job for the entire week, and that's just on Monday. And the same thing with us right now, Michelle. We're talking on a Saturday. Every Saturday, I have blocked off 4 hours to conduct 8 interviews. And so I do 8 interviews on other shows every single Saturday. Right now it's 122, so I've done 7 of the 8 interviews I'm going to do today. And you know what? I love doing these interviews because I'm talking to people like yourself who are, enjoyable to talk to, enthusiastic, fun, successful, like it's a blast. But every single Saturday, I block off these 4 hours to do all of these interviews. And so because of that, instead of having random interviews, these random 16 interviews scheduled throughout the week at random times, having to set my computer up and get everything ready to go and my microphone all, prepped up and ready to go for these 16 different things, I just have 2 times where I'm blocking off just a total of 12 hours for an entire 16 episodes worth, and it is incredibly powerful to use that batching method. And the tool, Michelle, that I use for that, which you know very well because you use it to schedule this interview, is called Schedule Once. I couldn't live without it. I have 6 different individual links through Schedule Once. So I want to reach out to somebody to be an entrepreneur on fire. I send them a specific link that when they open it up, it just gives them Mondays to block off for Entrepreneur on Fire. When you asked me to be on your show, I sent you another link, a completely different one, that just offered Saturdays for these 4 slots within these 4-hour time frames. And I'm booked up for Saturdays for the next month and a half as well, with 8 interviews every single Saturday. And using Schedule Once allows me to do that, allows me to book my mentor sessions, because I mentor 4 people on a monthly basis. It allows me to do all of these things with that one tool, and it's simply incredible.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I'm a huge time batcher myself, and I love that when you sent me the link and I had Saturday choices all the way through, and I booked it 6 weeks out, and it was great, and it's so easy. But I think that, honestly, I love the quote by Brendan Burchard that says, success is scheduled. And it's so true. All of those people who are sitting there wondering, can I do this? Can I take it to the next level? Can I get this done? It's all about how you schedule and plan. And I know that sometimes you say the word plan and people groan, and whenever I say it at speaking engagements or whatever, I can always hear a boom. But I think that plan is the 4-letter word for success, and if we can embrace it and put our arms around it, then we will find greater time, greater success, and ultimately feel what I want to have everyone feel, all the entrepreneurs that I work with, is that you can have a thriving business and a meaningful personal life without having to sacrifice, and it's all about how you schedule your time. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you so much for being with us, John. You've provided us with a ton of information and resources. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about John, you can go to his website at eofire.com. Again, that's E as in Edward, O as in Oscar, fire.com. If you're new to John, find out about his daily podcast, and also sign up on his site. It's just right there on the homepage to see that webinar on podcasters and how to podcast. And that webinar I've watched, and it is so valuable and so packed full of information. If you're interested in learning more about Podcasters Paradise, the program that he uses to teach people just like you how to create their own podcast, I encourage you to get with that program because it is valuable and very, very impressive. So John, thank you so much. I know that your time is valuable, and we're going to let you go here in just 1 second. Is there anything else that you feel like you wanted to say that we haven't said yet? Any final tip you'd like to leave with our listeners?
The final tip I'd like to leave with your listeners, Michelle, is my favorite word / acronym, which is focus. Follow one course until success. We truly live in this day and age where there are so many distractions, there are so many rabbit holes and bright, shiny objects that we can chase. But look within yourself and find that one thing that you truly are willing to commit your heart and your soul and your time to, and then focus on that one thing. My one thing was to create a 7-day-a-week podcast. And until I created the systems and I had everything established and in place, there was nothing else that I focused on. That was my sole focus. And now that I had that system in place, it's allowed me to open up and do some other things while keeping my 7-day-a-week podcast going strong. I just got back from a 2-week trip to Europe. It was amazing. It was purely for pleasure. I visited 5 countries in 14 days and had a blast, and my business was running the whole time with the help of my 2 full-time virtual assistants, absolutely. But 14 episodes went live for Entrepreneur on Fire. Newsletters went out. Blog posts that were scheduled went out. And it was because of the system I put in place by focusing for a long time just on Entrepreneur on Fire and allowing me to really knock it out of the park.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I love that acronym for focus. That is great. I know that will help me keep things on task for myself. So again, thank you so much for being with us on the Make It Happen show, and have a great weekend.
Happy Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, see ya. For those of you who are staying with us on the Make It Happen show, I'm excited to share with you the Marketing Strategies Purchase Cycle. This is a simple system that you can use to help you bring prospects into your buying cycle quickly and easily. It'll help you shorten your cycle and also help you get people to purchase faster so that they feel like they're getting the information that they need from you, but that they're also being educated through the sales process, through the cycle, so that they feel ultimately like they are getting the information that they need. Now, I'm going to share my screen here with you so I can walk you through a quick presentation about the 5 steps in the Marketing Strategies Purchase Cycle. Step number 1 is awareness. Know that people aren't going to automatically hear about your business, and people always laugh when I say this, but it's so funny to me how often I'm working with individuals in their marketing strategy session, and I say, how are you currently marketing? And they say, well, I have a website and I'm on Facebook. But the question is how are you getting people to your website, and how are you getting people to Facebook? Figure out the things that you can do to generate awareness that will help you get more eyes on your business. Now, in the awareness section, it's about short, quick messages that help people decide, do I want more information? In the beginning, they don't want a huge blog post. They don't want a huge audio. They just want little snippets of features, benefits, and how you're going to solve problems for them. We'll talk more about what outlets to use in just a minute. But the second step is interest. Once they're aware of your product and service, how are they going to be interested in learning more? How can you pique that interest so that they'll move through to the next step of the purchase cycle? In this area, they want a little more information. Again, they're not quite ready for anything big or lengthy, but they are ready for additional information from you, additional information about how you're going to solve their problems, why your company is better than another company, obviously done in a very professional manner, but continuing to pique their interest with short, quick informational messages that help them then go to the next step. Consideration. Consideration is a really valuable part of the purchase cycle. Consideration is where people decide, yes, I kind of want this product, but they're also asking themselves, is this the product that I'm going to purchase from this company? So once they're kind of interested in a product and they think, yes, I might actually buy this, this works for services as well, then they're going to consider you as a business, but they'll also likely consider your competitors. So this is where you're going to provide a lot more information. You're going to post on your site a competitors matrix. What are other people in your industry doing, and how are you better? What features and benefits do you offer above and beyond the competition? Or what makes you unique? What makes you uniquely able to solve their problem with your product or service? If you can provide that information for them here and do the research for them, it'll keep them on your home court advantage, as we were talking about earlier, because you're providing that information on your site and they're not going to look for it elsewhere. The next one is trial. Trial is one of the most important parts of the purchase cycle. They want to experience you. They want to hold the product. They want to be able to experience a coach or an expert or a wellness advocate or a personal trainer. They want to know if the chemistry is right, so they might want to meet with you or talk to you. A lot of people will do free consultations to see if this is the right fit for their businesses. So trial is really important. Figure out how to master that as part of your purchase cycle. And then finally, purchase. Purchase is important because how many times have you gone somewhere online to make a decision to buy something and then the purchase process was clunky? The shopping cart didn't quite work. It didn't add things. And so all of a sudden you have committed to buying a product, but because you can't actually purchase it, you give up and move on and you don't actually make that purchase. So please watch that and make sure that you are committed to that purchase process as part of the marketing strategies purchase cycle so that you can ultimately help people get from the prospect phase to the customer phase easily. Now, if you look through, I'm going to share with you some of these additional pieces here so that you can see the types of marketing that are good for each section of the marketing strategies purchase cycle. Now, if you'd like to see this in greater detail or if you'd like a copy of this, I'm going to invite you to email me personally at michelle@speakmichelle.com. I'll happily send you this slide and other slides that will give you this so that you don't feel like you have to madly write everything down. But know that word of mouth is good all the way through. Social media is great for the first 3 sections: awareness, interest, and consideration. But once they get to trial, they really want more. So make sure you're driving them back to your site. Events are great. Websites are great. Know that networking is good, but they each fit a specific area of the purchase cycle. Now, there's one final thing I want to share with you about this before we close out our show for today. Know that the longer this purchase cycle will be, it depends on how much your product costs. If you sell a high-end product or service, chances are it's going to take longer for you to sell that product or service into the market so that you can ultimately help people make that buying decision. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be overnight. But if you're selling a short, small commodities object like loaves of bread or other kinds of information in that space, if it's quick, small dollar amounts, you can probably move them through this purchase cycle really quickly and really easily. But this is something that I really want you to master and manage. Know that it's not just about the messages. It's not just about the mediums that you pick, but it's about nurturing people through this purchase cycle so that they will ultimately purchase from you and ultimately know that it's important for them to be with you. Now, if marketing is something that you're interested in and that you know you need more resources in this department, I'm going to encourage you to check out the marketing Playbook. It's a tool that I have created that helps people to be able to schedule all of these things and to take their campaigns to the next level. If this is something that you know you want or need, you can look out for more information at that at the michelleontheair.com/marketing playbook. It goes greater detail into this information and more. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's special episode of the Make It Happen show with Michelle McCullough. Again, thank you so much for watching and listening. Watch out for more Make It Happen shows on michelleontheair.com. Also, follow me on Google Plus so that you can find out about more of these hangouts. My radio show on Mondays, Make It Happen Mondays, is at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Eastern. It is live on toginet.com, but again, you can find all the details that you need at michelleontheair.com. And finally, I want to give you a free gift. For those of you who are new to Make It Happen Radio, I've got the Make It Happen Toolkit available for you for free. 3 of my favorite tools that I use day in and day out. We talk about batching your time, other time management tips, there's a goal map, and there's also a roles and goals activity that helps you focus and center on the relationships that mean the most to you so that you can ultimately make powerful decisions about how you spend your time and how you're growing your relationships at the same time. Again, that's free for you at michelleontheair.com, so I encourage you to go and download that for free, and I'm so excited. Again, thank you so much for being with us. Join us next week. Lots of tips and tools available to you today. tons of juicy nuggets. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with all of those information, but I want you to schedule some time this week to apply the principles that you've learned and ultimately decide what works for you and what doesn't. I know that there's lots of information out there, and I know there's lots of resources available to help you, and I honor you for reaching out to us. And until we meet again, make a wish, make it happen. Have a great day.